The stars belonged to the Empire, or so Prince As believed as he stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn. His reflection stared back at him from the viewing screen, tall and proud in his ceremonial armor. Behind him, his younger brother and reviewed tactical displays with practiced ease. They had been born into power, raised to command, and trained to conquer. In 3,000 cycles, no enemy had ever challenged the Empire and survived. The command ship hummed with quiet efficiency. Hundreds of crew members worked at their stations, monitoring the vast territories that stretched across the sector. Every planet, every trade route, every minor species fell under control. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled and were the strongest. As walked to the tactical station where his brother stood, and was younger by 5 cycles but equally skilled in warfare. Their mother Empress had given them command of the expansion fleets as a test. So far, they had exceeded every expectation. 12 new systems brought into the fold, 4 resistant species. Not a single defeat marked their records. Another quiet day, and said, gesturing at the empty threat board. Perhaps we should push further into the outer rim. There are rumors of rich mineral worlds beyond the nebula. As nodded. The Empire always grows. Stagnation is death. At that moment, the censor officer called out, "My princes, we have detected unknown vessels entering our space. 5 ships entering near the nebula coordinates." Both brothers turned. Unknown vessels were rare. Most species in the sector knew better than to cross into territory without permission. Those who tried once never tried again. "Display," As ordered. The main screen shifted to show 5 ships moving in loose formation. They were small, perhaps a tenth the size of the Sovereign Dawn. The design was crude, with visible hull plating and what appeared to be chemical thrusters. No elegant energy fields, no sophisticated cloaking, just raw metal and fire. And laughed. "Look at those primitive designs. They must be from some backwater colony that hasn't discovered proper technology yet." The censor officer continued his report. "The vessels appear to use fusion drives and carry ballistic weapons. Energy signatures are minimal. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies in broken galactic common." "Put it through," As said. The speakers crackled. A female voice came through, the pronunciation awkward but understandable. "This is Captain Han of the United Earth Space Command vessel Perseverance. We are explorers from the Terran systems. We seek peaceful passage through this region and hope to establish contact with local civilizations for trade and cultural exchange. Please respond." The bridge fell silent, then burst into laughter. "United Earth, Terran systems. I've never heard of such places. They must be from beyond the outer rim, and they dare to request passage as if they have any rights here." As studied the ships more carefully. They were indeed primitive, but something about their formation suggested military discipline. The way they moved spoke of trained crews, not random explorers. Still, their technology was centuries behind standards, perhaps more. "Open a channel," he commanded. When the communications officer nodded, As spoke with the authority of 3,000 cycles of imperial dominance. "Unknown vessels, you have entered territory without authorization. This is a violation of imperial law. You will power down your engines and prepare to be escorted to a detention facility for processing. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessels. You have 1 standard hour to comply." There was a pause. Then the human voice returned, and As detected something in her tone that surprised him. Not fear, but disappointment. "We were hopping for a friendlier greeting," Captain Han said. "We mean no harm and carry no hostile intent. Surely we can discuss this peacefully. We're happy to turn back if our presence is unwelcome, but detention seems excessive." And made a cutting gesture across his throat. "They negotiate like they have a choice. How amusing." As agreed. He had seen this before. Lesser species always tried to bargain when they first encountered the Empire. They learned quickly that bargaining was not an option. You misunderstand your situation. This is not a negotiation. Comply or be destroyed. Those are your only choices. Another pause. When the human spoke again, her voice was calm but firm. Captain, we've traveled a long way from home. We've faced pirates, radiation storms, and the void itself. We didn't survive all that just to surrender to threats. We're leaving your space now. Don't try to stop us. The audacity stunned everyone on the bridge, and's face darkened with anger. They dare refuse. They dare threaten us with their toy ships. Os felt his own pride wounded. No one spoke to princes this way. No one dismissed their commands. These humans clearly didn't understand the reality of their situation. A lesson was needed. Deploy frigates, he ordered. 3 ships. Intercept and disable their engines. I want them taken intact. I want to see what kind of fools speak so boldly to an empire. 3 frigates detached from the battle group, sleek vessels armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could withstand small asteroid impacts. They accelerated toward the human fleet with practiced precision. The engagement would be over in minutes. Os watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The frigates closed the distance rapidly, moving to bracket the human ships in a standard capture formation. The humans scattered, but they had nowhere to go. The frigates were faster, more maneuverable, and infinitely more powerful. Escort them to Detention Bay 7, Os said to the frigate commanders. Minimal damage. I want the crews alive for interrogation. And leaned close to his brother. Do you think they'll provide any useful information? They seem barely civilized. Perhaps, Os replied. Or perhaps they'll simply be another footnote in the Empire's history. Either way, they'll learn what it means to challenge the... On the screen, the frigates closed in. The human ships continued to maneuver, but it was futile. In moments, this small incident would be over. The princes would have their prisoners, the humans would have their lesson, and the natural order would be restored. Os had no way of knowing that in the next few hours, everything he believed about the Empire, about power, and about the nature of strength itself would be shattered beyond repair. He stood on his bridge, confident and supreme, watching 5 primitive ships prepare to learn their place in the galaxy. He had never been more wrong about anything in his life. The 3 frigates moved into position like predators surrounding wounded prey. Commander Ash, leading the intercept force, felt a familiar satisfaction. This would be quick and clean. The human ships were already slowing down, probably realizing the futility of resistance. He opened a channel to the nearest vessel. Human ship, this is Commander Ash of the Imperial Navy. Cut your engines now and... The human ship suddenly accelerated at a speed that made Ash's eyes widen. The acceleration was impossible. No organic crew could survive those G-forces. His own ship's inertial dampeners barely kept his crew conscious during emergency maneuvers, and the humans were pulling twice that acceleration like it was nothing. All ships pursue, he ordered, pushing his frigate's engines to maximum. They're trying to run. The 5 human ships scattered in different directions with shocking coordination. Ash targeted the closest one, a small vessel that had identified itself as the Defiant. He watched in disbelief as it executed a full reverse thrust, flipping end over end while maintaining the same velocity. The maneuver violated every principle of space combat he had been taught. Fire warning shots, Ash commanded. Disable their engines. Plasma bolts lanced through space, beautiful streams of superheated energy that could melt through ship armor in seconds. The shots passed through empty space. The humans had already moved, their reaction time impossibly fast. Prince N's voice crackled over the command channel from the Sovereign Dawn. Commander, what's taking so long? They're primitives with chemical rockets. Ash felt sweat on his forehead. My prince, they're more maneuverable than expected, but we have them cornered, requesting permission to use disabling fire. Granted, stop playing with them. The 3 frigates closed in again, this time firing to disable rather than warn. Precision plasma bursts aimed at engine sections and thruster clusters. The humans responded with their own weapons, and Ash almost laughed when he saw them. Kinetic weapons. Actual metal projectiles propelled by chemical explosives. Technology his ancestors had abandoned 1,000 cycles ago. Then the first round hit his wingman's ship. The projectile moved so fast that sensors barely registered it before impact. It punched through the energy shield like the shield didn't exist, passed through the outer hull, and struck the reactor containment chamber. The frigate exploded in a brilliant flash of light that temporarily blinded everyone watching. Ash stared at his tactical display in shock. "Report, what happened?" His sensor officer's voice shook. "Sir, the projectile's velocity it was moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Our shields are designed for energy weapons and slow-moving debris. They can't stop solid matter at that velocity." A second frigate moved to engage the human ship that had fired. The ship was small, barely larger than a shuttle, but it fought with terrifying efficiency. The frigate's captain deployed full defensive screens and advanced carefully. The human ship launched missiles, dozens of them streaking through space on trails of fire. The point defense systems came alive, firing thousands of micropulses that destroyed most of the incoming projectiles. Most, but not all. 3 missiles got through the defensive fire. They weren't explosive warheads. They were solid penetrators, tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. They hit the frigate at multiple points and the impact forces tore the ship apart. Metal screamed as hull sections separated. Crew compartments vented into space. The frigate died in seconds. Ash ordered full retreat, his hands shaking on the controls. 2 ships gone, 2 entire crews dead, killed by primitives, killed by humans using technology that shouldn't work against defenses. On the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn, Prince Os stood frozen, staring at the tactical display. The symbols representing 2 frigates had changed from green to red. Dead, destroyed, impossible. "Replay the engagement," he said quietly. "I need to see how this happened." The bridge crew worked in silence. No one wanted to speak. The replay showed everything in terrible detail. The human ships moved like nothing they had encountered before, pulling maneuvers that should kill their crews. Their weapons were primitive but used with devastating intelligence. They knew exactly where to hit, exactly how to exploit the weaknesses in shield technology. And slammed his fist on the console. "This is impossible. They're using metal bullets and chemical rockets. How are they beating our ships?" The science officer spoke up hesitantly. "My prince, I believe I understand. Our shields are calibrated to stop energy weapons and slow-moving matter like asteroids. These humans are using kinetic weapons at velocities we never anticipated. The shield frequency doesn't interact properly with solid matter at such speeds." Then recalibrate the shields, and shouted, "It will take time, my prince. The shield systems were designed over centuries with specific assumptions about the nature of space combat. We never considered that anyone would use such primitive weapons with such advanced delivery systems." Os found his voice. "Recall all ships, full defensive formation around the Sovereign Dawn. I need to think." As the remaining vessels pulled back, a new transmission came through. It was the human captain again, her voice carrying a weight it hadn't before. "Commander, this is Captain Han. I truly regret what just happened. We didn't come here to fight. We came to explore, to learn, to make friends. You forced our hand. Please, let's end this now. Let us leave in peace or let us talk like civilized beings. More death serves no one." Standing beside Captain Han on the Perseverance, Engineer Park monitored the ship's movements. He spoke quietly to the captain. "They're regrouping. That was a shock to them, but they have many more ships. If they come at us with everything, we can't win." Captain Han nodded. "I know, but maybe they'll listen now. Maybe we showed them we're not helpless prey." She added to her transmission, "We have medical supplies and personnel ready to assist survivors from your ships. Our Dr. Song can provide aid if you'll allow it. We don't want to be enemies. We never did." On the Sovereign Dawn and sneered at the offer. "They destroy our ships and then offer medical aid. The arrogance." But Os wasn't listening to his brother. He was thinking about what had just happened. 2 frigates destroyed, veteran crews dead, all because he had underestimated these humans, all because he assumed primitive technology meant primitive minds. The tactical officer provided casualty reports. 83 crew members confirmed dead, 27 escape pods recovered, survivors in critical condition. The worst losses the princes had suffered in their entire military careers. Os looked at the human ships on his display. They weren't running. They weren't gloating. They were holding position, weapons powered but not targeting anything, waiting, offering peace even after winning. Pride warred with logic in his mind. The Empire had never accepted defeat. The Empire never backed down. But the Empire had also never faced an enemy quite like this. An enemy that fought like demons but spoke like diplomats. An enemy that killed efficiently but offered medical aid to survivors. He made his decision, and it was the wrong one. The decision that would destroy everything he had ever known. "We cannot allow this to stand," he said quietly. "We cannot return home with a report that primitives defeated us. The Empire's reputation, our mother's trust in us, our own honor, all of it depends on erasing this incident." And smiled darkly. "What do you propose, brother?" "We assemble the full battle group, 20 ships. We overwhelm them with force, and we make sure there are no survivors to tell the tale." The crew hesitated. The tactical officer spoke carefully. "My prince, they've already broadcast the engagement on multiple frequencies. Other species may have intercepted it." "Then we claim it was pirates using stolen human identification. We create whatever story we need. But these humans die, and they die quickly." Orders went out across the fleet. 20 warships began to move, forming a battle formation that had conquered star systems. Os watched them assemble, feeling his confidence return. 2 frigates lost was a fluke, a lucky strike by primitives who got in one good hit. Against a full battle group, the humans would be crushed. He never considered that he was making the same mistake twice, only bigger. He never considered that the humans might have more surprises. And he never considered that his decision to cover up this defeat would ultimately expose the Empire's greatest weaknesses to the entire galaxy. The war was about to escalate, and Prince Os had just guaranteed his own destruction. The nebula glowed with purple and blue gases, a stellar nursery where new stars were being born. It was beautiful and deadly, filled with radiation and dense clouds that played havoc with sensors. The human fleet had retreated into its depths, and now 20 warships followed them in. Prince Os stood at the center of the Sovereign Dawn's bridge, surrounded by tactical displays showing every ship in his battle group. This was overwhelming force. This was the might of an empire. 5 primitive human ships couldn't possibly stand against it. "Spread formation," he commanded. "I want them surrounded, no escape routes." The fleet deployed with practiced precision, moving through the nebula's outer regions. Sensor interference was significant, but their advanced systems could compensate. The humans, with their primitive technology, would be blind in this environment. Captain Han watched the ships on her own displays. Her bridge crew was silent, tense. They all knew what was coming. 20 warships against 5. The odds were impossible. "They really want us dead," said Tactical Officer Nam from her station. "This isn't about territory anymore. This is about pride." Captain Han nodded slowly. "Then we make them regret it. How's that shield frequency analysis coming?" Science Officer looked up from her console, exhaustion evident on her face. She had been working non-stop since the first engagement, analyzing every scrap of data they had collected on technology. "I've got it, Captain. Their shields operate on a narrow frequency band. They're incredibly strong against energy weapons, but they have blind spots. I can broadcast the exact frequencies we need to target. Do it. Send it to all ships on the encrypted channel. The information spread through the human fleet in seconds. Every captain, every weapons officer now knew exactly where to aim. It wouldn't be enough to win, but it might be enough to survive. Incoming transmission, the communications officer said. It's the Prince again. Captain Han straightened in her chair. Put it through. Prince's face appeared on the screen and his expression was cold fury. Humans, you have made a fatal error. You damaged our ships. You killed our people. And worst of all, you embarrassed us. The Empire does not forget such insults. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Captain Han kept her voice steady. We offered peace. We offered medical aid to your survivors. You chose this. Whatever happens now is on you. Spoken like a primitive who doesn't understand her place in the galaxy. After we destroy you, we'll find this Earth you mentioned, and we'll show your entire species what happens when you challenge the Empire. The transmission cut off. Captain Han felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger wouldn't help now. Only cold calculation would keep them alive. All ships prepare for engagement. Use the nebula. Make them work for every shot. And remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to make them bleed enough that they think twice about following through on those threats. The battle group advanced. Their formation was textbook perfect, ships positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Against any conventional enemy, it would be unstoppable, but humans weren't conventional. The first cruiser entered a dense gas cloud, and the human ship was waiting. It fired a spread of missiles from point-blank range, then immediately dove deeper into the nebula. The missiles weren't aimed at the cruiser but at the cloud itself. They detonated in the gas, creating a chain reaction of explosions that temporarily blinded every sensor in the area. In the confusion, Pilot launched from the Perseverance in a single-seat fighter craft. It was a tiny vessel, barely 10 meters long, but flew it like an extension of his own body. He dove through the expanding explosions, his sensors actually working better in the interference because they were designed for atmospheric flight, not space combat. A destroyer emerged from the gas and was on it instantly. His fighter carried only 2 weapons, a rotary cannon and a single torpedo. He fired the cannon at the destroyer's sensor array, shredding it with tungsten rounds, then launched the torpedo at the maneuvering thrusters. The torpedo was guided by a human brain's own reflexes, not a computer system. It couldn't be jammed or confused. The destroyer's thrusters exploded. The massive ship began to spin, unable to control its movement. It careened into an asteroid and the impact crumpled its bow section. Was already gone, racing back toward the human fleet. Prince Os watched his tactical display with growing horror. The battle was barely 5 minutes old and he had already lost 2 ships. The humans fought like nothing he had encountered. They used the environment. They struck from unexpected angles. They coordinated without apparent communication, as if each captain could read the other's minds. All ships tighten formation, he ordered. Don't let them isolate us. But tightening the formation played into the humans' hands. They had deployed mines throughout the nebula, simple nuclear devices with proximity triggers. As the ships clustered together, they triggered multiple mines simultaneously. The explosions weren't enough to destroy the ships outright, but they battered shields and damaged sensors. Then the real attack began. All 5 human ships emerged from different directions, firing in coordinated volleys. Every shot targeted the shield frequencies that had identified. Rounds and missiles punched through shields that should have been impenetrable. A frigate's shield collapsed, and kinetic rounds tore through its hull like paper. Another ship tried to retreat and ran straight into a minefield. Explosions lit up the nebula like a deadly fireworks display. On the Sovereign Dawn, alarms blared. Prince shouted orders that no one could hear over the chaos. The tactical officer reported casualties with a trembling voice. 8 ships damaged, 3 destroyed, and the battle had been going on for less than 20 minutes. Then came the moment that changed everything. The cruiser Iron Talon managed to catch the human ship Horizon in a tractor beam. Marines launched from the cruiser, ready to board and capture the human crew. The Marines forced their way through the Horizon's airlock, expecting resistance. They found a ship that was bigger on the inside than it appeared from outside. Corridor after corridor of pods, hundreds of them, thousands of them. The Marine commander accessed the ship's database, and what he found made his blood run cold. The Horizon wasn't a warship, it was a colony ship. All 5 human vessels were colony ships. The crews they had been fighting were tiny skeleton teams, barely enough to operate the vessels. The rest were civilians in frozen sleep. Teachers, farmers, engineers, children. These weren't warriors. These were families looking for a new home. The Marine commander opened a channel to the Sovereign Dawn. "My princes, these ships. They're not military, they're colonists. There are children here." Prince Os felt something cold settle in his stomach. Children, they had been attacking families. Before he could respond, a new voice came through the communication system. It was Captain Han, and she sounded tired and sad. "Commander, you've boarded the Horizon. You've seen what we are. We're not an invasion force. We're not your enemy. We're just people looking for a new world to call home. We have children in sleep who dream of seeing alien suns. We have teachers who want to learn about your culture. We have farmers who want to grow crops under new stars." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was harder. "But you've made it clear you'd rather kill us than talk to us. So we're giving you one chance. Let the Horizon go. Let us leave your space. Or we show you what humans do when you threaten our children." Princeton laughed bitterly. "You're surrounded. You have no leverage to make demands." The response was immediate. Every human ship powered up their reactors beyond safe limits. Captain Han's voice came through one last time. "We're colonists. We're scientists. We're families. But before we were any of those things, we were survivors. And humans have one rule that has kept us alive through ice ages, plagues, wars, and the void itself. We never ever let anyone harm our children, not without making them pay a price they can't afford." On the Horizon, the skeleton crew activated the self-destruct sequence. The pods had been evacuated to other ships during the fighting, a fact they hadn't noticed. The ship was empty except for the Marines. The Horizon exploded, taking the Iron Talon and every Marine with it. The blast wave damaged 2 more ships. Prince Os stared at the expanding fireball where the Horizon had been. They had destroyed their own ship, killed themselves, rather than let it be captured. Captain Han's transmission continued, broadcast on every frequency. "That's 11 of your ships. We can keep going, or you can leave, choose." The fleet was in shambles. 11 ships destroyed or crippled, hundreds of crew members dead, morale shattered, and 4 human ships still fighting with undimmed ferocity. Os looked at his brother, and his face had gone pale. The glory they had sought had turned to ashes. "Full retreat," Os whispered. "All ships full retreat." As the battle group fled the nebula, Tactical Officer Nam did something that would change the galaxy. She broadcast the entire battle on every known frequency, complete with tactical analysis. She sent it to every species in the sector. She made sure the entire galaxy would know that the mighty Empire had been beaten by 5 human colony ships. The Empire's invincibility was a lie, and now everyone knew it. The Sovereign Dawn limped back to space with the survivors of the battle group. 9 ships had been completely destroyed. 5 more were so badly damaged they needed to be towed. Out of the 20 vessels that had entered the nebula with such confidence, only 6 returned fully operational. Prince Os sat alone in his private quarters, staring at nothing. His hands trembled. He had lost more ships in one engagement than the Empire had lost in the last century, and the humans were still alive, still out there, broadcasting their victory to anyone who would listen. The door opened without his permission. Prince An entered, and his face showed the same shock that As felt. The younger brother had always been confident, almost arrogant. Now he looked like someone who had seen his entire world collapse. "The broadcasts are spreading," and said quietly. "Every species in the sector has received them. Our intelligence division reports that they're being shared on every communication network they can monitor." "Can we stop them?" As asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, the humans used encryption methods we don't understand, broadcast on frequencies we can't jam, and included tactical data that proves every claim they make. The entire galaxy is watching us bleed." As stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the damaged fleet crawled toward the nearest Imperial station. "What does Mother say?" "The Empress has summoned us. We're to report to the throne world immediately." That was it then. Their careers were over. Perhaps their lives as well, depending on how merciful their mother felt. The Empire did not tolerate failure, especially not from those who carried royal blood. But the damage went far beyond two princes losing their positions. Across the sector, species that had lived under domination for generations watched the broadcasts and saw something they had never seen before: hope. There were a reptilian species that had been conquered 200 cycles ago. They had been forced to provide labor and resources to the Empire, their own government reduced to puppet administrators. They lived in fear of garrison troops and had long since given up dreams of freedom. On the Of Prime, a young rebel named watched the battle footage on a smuggled communication device. She watched humans fight with desperate courage. She watched them use tactics that exploited weaknesses. She watched them win against impossible odds. And she began to plan. Within days, resistance cells were sharing the human tactical analysis. They studied how the humans had overcome shields. They learned how to use the Empire's predictable tactics against them. And when they struck at the garrison on Prime's northern continent, they did so with precision that shocked everyone. The garrison fell in 6 hours. The rebels used improvised weapons that mimicked human kinetic attacks. They exploited the same shield frequencies. They fought with a ferocity born from watching colonists defend their children. The rebellion spread to other worlds. Then to the Collective, a network of peaceful trading stations that had been forced into imperial tribute payments. They closed their trade routes to ships and declared neutrality. The Nexus Assembly, a coalition of minor species, watched everything with careful attention. They had always maintained diplomatic relations with the Empire out of fear. Now they saw that fear might have been misplaced. They opened their borders to dissidents and offered asylum to anyone fleeing imperial justice. On the Perseverance, Captain Han monitored these developments with mixed feelings. They had never wanted to start a revolution. They had just wanted to find a new home for Earth's colonists. But their fight for survival had somehow become a symbol of resistance across the entire sector. Engineer Park worked in the ship's reactor room, repairing damage from the battle. The Perseverance had taken several hits, and while the ship was still functional, it needed care. As he worked, he received a transmission from an unexpected source. It was an engineer asking for help with shield technology. Then, a merchant requesting information about human defensive systems. Then a dozen other species, all asking questions, all seeking the knowledge that had allowed humans to defeat the Empire. Brought the requests to Captain Han. What should I tell them? The captain considered the question carefully. They could refuse, keep their tactical advantages secret. Or they could share, help these species defend themselves, and risk spreading human military technology to unknown civilizations. Share it, she decided, but only defensive technology. Shields, sensors, armor, no weapons. We don't want to turn this sector into a war zone. We just want everyone to be able to defend themselves. Dr. Song had her own challenges. The Perseverance had taken aboard several refugees who had been injured in their rebellion. Their biology was different from human, but basic medical principles still applied. She worked around the clock treating burns and broken bones, and word spread that humans would help anyone who needed it. Tactical Officer Nam continued broadcasting updates on the situation. She didn't editorialize. She simply presented facts. The Empire was facing multiple rebellions, trade routes were closing, diplomatic relationships were collapsing. The broadcasts served dual purposes. They kept the galaxy informed, and they kept pressure on the Empire to negotiate rather than escalate. And then came the transmission that changed everything. It was an official communication from the throne world, and it was addressed directly to Captain Han. Captain Han of the human fleet, this is Empress of the Empire. I wish to speak with you regarding the current situation. I propose a meeting on neutral ground to discuss terms. The human bridge crew fell silent. The Empress herself was reaching out. Not her military, not her diplomats, but the ruler of the Empire personally. Captain Han exchanged glances with her officers. This could be a trap. It could be a trick to locate and destroy them, but it could also be a genuine attempt at peace. Respond, she said. Tell her we're willing to talk. On the throne world, Empress received the response with relief. She was an old woman by standards, having ruled for 70 cycles. She had seen the Empire expand to its greatest extent. And now she was watching it begin to crumble because her sons had underestimated 5 colony ships. The princes stood before her throne, heads bowed in shame. Around them, the court watched in silence. Everyone knew that executions were possible. The Empress had never tolerated failure. But was not a fool. Killing her sons wouldn't undo the damage. It wouldn't restore the Empire's reputation. It wouldn't stop the rebellions. She needed a different approach. You tried to cover up your defeat, she said, her voice echoing through the throne room. You tried to eliminate witnesses. You escalated when you should have retreated. You turned a minor incident into a crisis that threatens our entire civilization. We accept full responsibility, Mother, As said quietly. We are prepared for whatever judgment you deem appropriate. I strip you of your military commands, the Empress declared. I remove you from the succession. You will spend the rest of your lives in contemplation of your failures. The princes accepted the sentence without protest. It was better than death. The Empress then addressed her full court. The Empire was built on the assumption that military might makes us superior. We believed that advanced technology meant inherent dominance. The humans have proven us wrong. They've shown that determination, ingenuity, and the will to protect one's own can overcome any advantage. She paused, letting her words sink in. We have a choice. We can continue to fight, pour more resources into crushing these rebellions and watch our empire tear itself apart. Or we can adapt. We can learn. We can become something better than conquerors. The court murmured in shock. The Empress was suggesting surrender, not to the humans specifically, but to the idea that the old ways might be wrong. I have agreed to meet with the human captain, continued, and I have invited representatives from every species in the sector. It is time for a new order, one based not on domination but on mutual respect. In the shadows of the throne room, former Prince As watched his mother reshape the empire. Everything he had believed, everything he had been taught, all of it was being dismantled in a single speech. And the catalyst for all of it had been 5 human ships, carrying families who just wanted to find a new home among the stars. Waypoint Theta was a neutral space station on the edge of the sector. It had served as a trading post for centuries, a place where different species could meet without the complications of territorial politics. Now, it hosted the most important diplomatic gathering in the sector's history. Captain Han arrived on a small shuttle from the Perseverance. She wore her uniform, clean but showing signs of wear from months of deep space travel. Behind her came Engineer Park and Dr. Song. They represented humanity, though they had never expected or wanted that responsibility. The docking bay was filled with vessels from dozens of species, ships with their distinctive scale-pattern hulls, merchant vessels, Nexus Assembly diplomatic cruisers, and at the center, massive and imposing, the Imperial flagship. As they walked through the station corridors, alien beings watched them with curiosity and respect. Some were species that had benefited from the shared defensive technology. Others were simply curious about the humans who had changed everything. The conference chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate different atmospheric requirements and physical sizes. Empress sat at the head of the room, her presence commanding even in this neutral space. Around her were representatives from every major species in the sector. Captain Han took her seat, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. She was just a colony ship captain. She had been trained to navigate space, manage crew, and establish settlements, not negotiate the future of an entire galactic sector. The Empress spoke first. Captain Han, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I will be direct. The Empire has controlled this sector for 3,000 cycles. We believed our rule was absolute and our methods beyond question. You proved us wrong in a matter of hours. Han chose her words carefully. Your Majesty, we never sought to challenge your empire. We were just families looking for a home. Your ships attacked us and we defended ourselves. That's all. That is not all, interjected a delegate named, the same young rebel who had led the uprising on Prime. You showed us that the Empire could be beaten. You gave us hope. You changed everything. The Empress nodded slowly. Indeed, and now we must decide what comes next. I have proposals, but I wish to hear from the human delegation first. What do you want from this gathering? Captain Han glanced at her companions, gave an encouraging nod. Dr. Song smiled gently. They were trusting her to speak for all of them. We want what we've always wanted, Han said. Safe passage to find a world where we can settle, permission to establish trade relationships, the opportunity to learn from other civilizations and share what we know. We don't want territory. We don't want power. We just want a place to call home. A merchant spoke up. And the defensive technologies you've been sharing, what do you want in return for those? Nothing, Park said firmly. We share them freely because everyone has the right to defend themselves. We won't share weapons technology, but shields, sensors, armor. These things should belong to everyone. The room fell silent. The concept of freely sharing advanced technology was alien to most species present. Knowledge was power, and power was closely guarded. The Empress studied the humans for a long moment. You ask for very little. Many in your position would demand reparations, territory, preferential trade agreements. Why do you ask for so little? Dr. Song answered this time. Because we've seen what happens when people take too much. Earth's history is full of empires that conquered and dominated. They all fell eventually. We learned that cooperation lasts longer than domination. Friendship is more valuable than tribute. The Empress stood, and the chamber fell silent. I propose the following. The Empire will release all subjugated species from forced tribute and labor. We will maintain our territory but recognize the sovereignty of other civilizations. We will establish a galactic council where all species have equal representation and equal voice. Gasps echoed through the chamber. This was more than anyone had expected. Furthermore, the Empress continued, I grant the human fleet permission to establish a colony on any unclaimed world within the sector. We will provide resources to assist in the establishment of this colony as reparations for our unprovoked attack. Captain Han felt tears forming in her eyes. After so long, after so much struggle, they would finally have their home. But the Empress wasn't finished. I also propose that humanity be granted a permanent seat on this galactic council, not because of your military strength, but because of what you represent. You showed us that honor, courage, and determination matter more than technology, that defending one's family and values is worth any cost. These are principles we all should embrace. The vote was unanimous. The Waypoint Accords were signed that day, establishing a new governmental structure for the sector. The age of domination was over. The age of cooperation had begun. Months passed. The human colony was established on a beautiful world they named New Haven. It had blue skies, vast oceans, and fertile soil. The colonists woke from sleep to find themselves in paradise, unaware of the battle their skeleton crew had fought to get them there. Captain Han stood in a field of native flowers, watching the sunset. She was no longer a ship captain. She had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. It was strange, going from commanding a ship to representing an entire species, but someone had to do it. Park had established a technical institute where he taught defensive technologies to students from dozens of species. He always emphasized that knowledge should be shared, that cooperation made everyone stronger. Dr. Song ran a medical academy that trained doctors from multiple species to treat multiple biologies. She had discovered that while bodies were different, the principles of care and compassion were universal. On the throne world, former Prince Os lived in a monastery far from the capital. He spent his days in meditation and study. The monastery had a library, and he had requested every document about human history and philosophy that he could find. He read about Earth's wars, its struggles, its countless mistakes. He learned about empires that had risen and fallen. He studied human philosophy, which spoke of dignity, freedom, and the inherent worth of every individual. One day, he came across a human text that made him stop and think. It was an old quote from a place called Earth. The measure of a civilization is how it treats its weakest members. They had been strong, they had conquered, they had dominated, but they had never considered whether strength alone was worth anything. The humans had been weaker in technology but stronger in spirit. They had lost a ship and crew in the battle, but they had won the war because they fought for something worth dying for. Os understood now. His empire had been built on fear and force. It had been hollow at its core, ready to crack at the first real challenge. The humans had shown them that true strength came from values, from community, from the willingness to sacrifice for others. He would spend the rest of his life trying to learn that lesson. Years passed. The Galactic Council met regularly at Waypoint Theta. Disputes were settled through negotiation rather than warfare. Trade flourished. Scientific knowledge was shared. The sector prospered in ways it never had under imperial rule. Ambassador Shin, who had been a botanist on the Perseverance, gave a speech at the 5th anniversary of the Waypoint Accords. He spoke about how humans had come to the stars not seeking glory or conquest, but looking for opportunity and wonder. "We came from a world that nearly destroyed itself many times," he said. "We learned hard lessons about the cost of hatred, the futility of domination, and the value of cooperation. We brought those lessons with us to the stars, not because we're better than anyone else, but because we've made every mistake possible and survived to learn from them." He gestured to the assembled delegates. "Each of you brings your own wisdom, your own experiences, your own contributions to this council. Together, we're building something that no single species could build alone. We're creating a civilization based on mutual respect and shared purpose." The applause was genuine and warm. The delegates had come to trust each other in ways that would have been impossible under the old empire. On New Haven, children played in parks that mixed Earth plants with native flora. They learned languages from multiple species. They grew up knowing that the galaxy was diverse, complicated, and beautiful. They would be the first generation to never know what it was like to see aliens as enemies. Captain Han walked through one of these parks, now old and gray. She had lived to see her colony thrive. She had watched humanity take its place among the stars, and she had done it all by refusing to give up, by protecting her people, and by offering friendship even to those who had tried to kill her. A young girl approached her, a human child born on New Haven. "Ambassador Han, is it true you fought the Empire all by yourself?" Han laughed gently. "Not by myself. I had a brave crew, smart officers, and we were protecting people we loved. That made us strong. Stronger than the Empire. Different from the Empire. They had better weapons and bigger ships, but we had something they didn't understand. We had each other, and we had a reason to fight that went beyond orders or duty. We fought for our families, our dreams, and our future. That's a kind of strength that no weapon can match." The girl nodded, not quite understanding but knowing it was important. She ran off to play with her friends, a mix of human and alien children who saw no difference between themselves. Han watched them go and smiled. This was what they had fought for. Not glory, not territory, not revenge. Just the simple right to live, to grow, and to be part of something larger than themselves. The princes had lost everything because they couldn't understand that. They had thought power came from domination, that strength came from force, that superiority came from technology. The humans had shown them the truth. Real power came from community. Real strength came from values worth defending. And real superiority didn't exist because every species had something unique to contribute. As the sun set over New Haven, casting long shadows across the parks and homes and schools, Captain Han felt at peace. They had traveled so far, fought so hard, and lost so much. But they had also gained a home, made friends among the stars, and helped create a better galaxy. And somewhere in a monastery on a distant world, a former prince meditated on the lessons he had learned from 5 human ships that refused to surrender. He would never rule again, never command fleets, never hold power. But perhaps in losing everything, he had finally learned what truly mattered.